At 7:23 a.m. on June 7, 1944, Major Sydney Radley-Walters crouched inside the turret of his Sherman tank Caribou, watching a German Panzer IV push through a Normandy hedgerow just 200 yards ahead. He was 24 years old. It was his second day in combat. He had 0 tank kills. The Panzer's turret began to rotate. Its gun was already tracking Caribou. Walters had trained on tanks for less than 2 years. Before 1942, he had never even seen one. Now he commanded a squadron of 8 Shermans, thin-skinned, gasoline-powered machines armed with 75mm guns that struggled against German armor. The Sherbrooke Fusilier Regiment had landed on Juno Beach just 18 hours earlier. Out of 11 Shermans that made it off the sand, 3 were already burning wrecks by dawn. The Germans were not retreating. They were counterattacking, with armor the Allies had not expected in these numbers. The math was unforgiving. A German Tiger could destroy a Sherman from 2,000 yards. A Sherman had to close to 500 yards and hit the side or rear to have any chance. Most never got that close. The Panzer IV in Walters' sights wasn't a Tiger, but it was still faster, better armored, and crewed by men who had been fighting since Poland. Walters had graduated from Bishop's University just 4 years earlier. His regiment had been infantry until January 1942, when the Canadian Army abruptly converted them to armor. Not a single man in the unit knew what a tank looked like. They learned from manuals. They trained on borrowed equipment. They hoped it would be enough. It wasn't. The first week in Normandy made that brutally clear. The Sherbrooks supported the 3rd Canadian Infantry Division, pushing inland through the bocage. German panzer units struck again and again. Panthers, Tigers, even older Panzer IVs engaged Shermans from ranges where the Canadian guns were ineffective. Tank crews had a word for it: brewed up. The Sherman's gasoline engine ignited easily. When hit, crews had seconds to escape. By mid-June, Walters understood the pattern. German tanks spotted first. German tanks fired first. The only way a Sherman survived was speed, terrain, and reaching the enemy's flank before the gun could turn. The Panzer's turret stopped rotating. Walters knew what came next. Either Caribou killed that tank in the next 10 seconds, or they became another statistic. His gunner waited. The German commander was likely doing the same calculations: range, elevation, armor piercing, or high explosive. Walters gave the order: fire. The 75mm gun roared. The Panzer IV shuddered. Black smoke erupted from its engine deck. No crew emerged. That was Walters' first kill. He didn't know it yet, but he would survive 3 tanks destroyed beneath him, suffer 2 wounds, and rack up 18 confirmed tank kills. Decades later, historians would debate whether he had helped kill Germany's most famous tank ace. Right now, he only knew one thing: he was still alive, and the war was just beginning. Normandy became a grinding battle of attrition. The Sherbrooks fought through the hedgerows south of Caen for 56 days without relief. Walters destroyed his 2nd tank on June 10th, a Panther pinning down Canadian infantry. His 3rd fell 4 days later near Carpiquet Airfield. Other squadron commanders weren't as lucky. By late June, the regiment had lost 23 Shermans. 11 loaders were dead. Most never saw what killed them. German tanks used the hedgerows like fortresses: hull down, turrets barely visible. Fire, reverse, relocate. By the time a muzzle flash was seen, the shell was already traveling at 3,000 feet per second. The Tiger I weighed 70 tons. Its frontal armor measured 120 millimeters. A Sherman's 75mm round could penetrate 79 millimeters at point-blank range. Against the Tiger's front plate, the result was always the same: it bounced. Allied intelligence had underestimated German strength. Tigers were supposed to be rare. Instead, entire battalions arrived in Normandy, including the 12th SS Panzer Division Hitler Youth, manned by fanatical crews trained since 1942. Walters learned to fight them anyway. Never silhouette on a ridge. Use terrain. Move fast. One platoon drew fire. Another flanked. Hit the sides. Hit the rear, where armor dropped to 60 to 80 millimeters. Thick enough to stop rifle fire. Thin enough for a 75mm shell at close range. By early July, Walters had destroyed 6 German tanks. The regiment promoted him to major and gave him permanent command of a squadron. He was 24 years old. Most of his crews were 19 or 20. They called him Rad. He made them sleep whenever possible, even in the afternoon, even when they mocked him for it. A month later, they understood why. Exhaustion killed more crews than enemy fire. The Sherman had advantages German tanks didn't. It was reliable. Breakdowns were rare, and when they happened, field mechanics fixed them in hours. Panthers and Tigers spent half their lives immobilized by mechanical failure. The Sherman was also fast, 30 miles per hour on roads, 20 cross-country. Speed meant Walters could choose when to fight and when to leave. But speed meant nothing if the enemy saw you first. German optics were superior. German crews, trained for years. Most had fought in Russia. On July 8th, during the assault on Cannes, Walters led his squadron near Buran. Artillery had pounded the village for 3 hours. Infantry reported light resistance. Then the Panthers appeared. 4 of them, hull down behind rubble. 2 Shermans were destroyed in the first 30 seconds. A shell punched through Caribou's turret side, missing Walters' head by 8 inches. His loader was killed instantly. Smoke grenades. Bailout. Run. He watched Caribou burn. His first tank. 11 kills. Gone. That night, the regiment issued him another Sherman. He named it Caribou too. Within a week, he added 2 more kills. But something else had arrived in Normandy. A new German unit. Heavy SS Panzer Battalion 101. All Tigers. Led by a man with 143 confirmed tank kills. His name was Michael Whitman. The new tanks arrived in mid-July. They looked like ordinary Shermans at first glance, but the difference was unmistakable once you saw the gun. These were Sherman Fireflies. British modifications. American hulls fitted with the 17-pounder anti-tank gun, a 76. 2mm cannon with a barrel nearly 5 feet longer than the standard 75. High-velocity, armor-piercing rounds. For the first time since landing in Normandy, Allied tank crews had a weapon that could penetrate a Tiger's frontal armor at combat range. Radley-Walters understood their value immediately and their danger. Fireflies looked different. German gunners learned quickly. Kill the Firefly first, then deal with the rest. So Walters kept them at the rear of his formations. Hidden, hull down, masked by terrain. They only revealed themselves when there was no other option. And when they did, German tanks died. By late July, Walters destroyed a Panther near Tilly-la-Campagne, then a Tiger south of Cannes. His gunners were faster now. Quicker target acquisition. Better range estimation. Less hesitation. The crews who survived the first month in Normandy became dangerous. They knew the ground. They knew the angles. They knew how to stay alive. On August 7th, Allied command launched Operation Totalize. The goal was decisive. Break through German lines south of Cannes. Reach Falaise. Cut off the German 7th Army before it could escape east. It would involve 4 armored divisions, hundreds of tanks, thousands of infantry, and heavy bomber support. The Germans knew it was coming. They had prepared for weeks. Minefields, anti-tank guns, hull-down positions for their panzers, and heavy SS Panzer Battalion 101 was moving into position. 7 Tiger tanks, Panzer IVs, self-propelled guns, all under the authority of SS Standartenführer Kurt Meyer. And 1 man volunteered to lead the counterattack. Michael Whitman. The Sherbrooke Fusiliers received their orders that night. A squadron would advance at dawn. Support the 2nd Canadian Infantry Division. Secure the high ground near Estiegnan de Kremsnel. Hold it against counterattack. Intelligence estimated moderate resistance. Maybe Panzer IVs. Possibly a Panther or 2. Intelligence was wrong. Radley-Walters didn't know that. By dawn on August 8th, his squadron was positioned behind the stone walls of Chateau Gomsnel. 8 Shermans. 2 Fireflies. Waiting. During the night, crews knocked firing ports through the chateau's thick walls. The building sat beside Route Nationale 158, open fields to the east, the village of Estiegnan to the north. Perfect fields of fire. Terrible escape routes. Operation Totalize had begun at midnight with heavy bomber strikes. Artillery thundered for 6 hours. By first light, Canadian and British infantry held the high ground. Everything seemed to be going according to plan. Then the radios crackled. German armor moving north from Synthos. Multiple contacts. Heavy tanks. Radley-Walters raised his periscope. Dust clouds. Deep engine noise. Not the sharp whine of American engines. These were Tigers. He heard them before he saw them. At 12:30 p.m., 7 Tigers broke through the hedgerow near Synthos. They advanced in 2 columns. one straight across open ground, the other hugging the tree line to the right. Infantry followed in half-tracks. Panzer IVs and self-propelled guns brought up the rear. The range was 1,500 yards, outside effective Sherman fire, while inside 88mm killing distance. Walters ordered hold fire. Let them close. The Fireflies needed clear shots. Everyone else needed luck. To the northeast, British tanks from the 1st Northamptonshire Yeomanry waited in orchards, concealed among trees. The Germans were advancing into a crossfire. They just didn't know it yet. The lead Tiger fired. The shell screamed past the chateau and detonated behind Walters' position. A ranging shot. The second round hit closer. Stone exploded from the wall. The Germans had spotted the firing ports. Walters waited. 1,200 yards. 1,100. Every second improved his odds and reduced his life expectancy. The lead Tiger eased forward hull down, only its turret visible. The commander was experienced. At 1,000 yards, British tanks opened fire from the orchards. Muzzle flashes in the trees. Round struck home. One Tiger slewed sideways, track damage. Another kept advancing. At 800 yards, the engagement escalated. A British Sherman exploded. Another burned, crew bailing out. German optics were better. Their guns were larger. Their armor thicker. Walters watched the rightmost column. 5 Tigers. The lead tank carried the number 007 on its turret. It rolled past the chateau. 500 yards. Close enough. Walters gave the order. 8 Shermans fired. The stone walls erupted with flame and smoke. The lead Tiger shuddered and stopped. A self-propelled gun behind it exploded. A Panzer IV slewed off the road. The German formation reacted, turrets traversing, crews searching through dust and smoke. But Tiger 007 kept moving. Its turret scanned methodically. Inside that tank was Michael Wittmann, Germany's greatest tank ace. And he had no idea a 24-year-old Canadian major was watching him through a periscope 400 yards away. At 12:32, one of Walters' Fireflies fired. The 17-pounder round crossed the distance in under a second. It punched through the left rear air intake of Tiger 007, just behind the turret. The tank jolted. Stopped. Black smoke poured from the engine deck. No crew emerged. Walters shifted targets immediately. A self-propelled gun tried to reverse behind the stalled Tiger. Another volley. It detonated violently. Ammunition cooking off, the superstructure hurled 20 feet into the air. British Fireflies hammered from the northeast. The crossfire worked. German armor burned across 500 yards of open ground. Another Tiger took repeated hits and stopped. One tried to slip behind a hedgerow. A Firefly caught it broadside. Catastrophic kill. Then Tiger 007 exploded. Not a fire. A detonation. The turret tore free and sailed clear of the hull. Fuel ignited. Ammunition detonated. The blast wave shook the chateau itself. Debris rained across the road. Walters kept firing. A Panzer IV tried to flee south. 2 Shermans tracked it. Rear deck hits. Engine fire. Another Tiger limped toward Synthos. British guns caught it. By 12:40, the counterattack was over. 7 Tigers advanced. 5 were destroyed or disabled. The rest retreated. Panzer IVs abandoned. Self-propelled guns burned. Infantry scattered. The 12th SS Panzer Division's attack collapsed in 10 minutes. Walters' squadron lost no tanks. 2 men wounded by fragments. 1 Sherman damaged, but operational. The Fireflies had done exactly what they were built to do. Radley-Walters keyed his radio and sent his after-action report. He didn't know yet what historians would argue decades later. He only knew this. A legend had just died in front of Chateau Gomsnell, and his war was far from finished. Radley-Walters' after-action report was brief and clinical. 5 enemy tanks destroyed. Multiple self-propelled guns and support vehicles eliminated. German counterattack repelled. He did not mention Tiger 007 by name. To him, it was just another wreck on a road already littered with burning German armor. He had no idea whose tank he had just destroyed. No idea that inside the shattered hull of Tiger 007 were the remains of SS Hauptsturmführer Michael Wittmann, Germany's most famous and highest-scoring tank ace. 143 confirmed kills. Dead at 30 years old. The Black Baron had been killed by a Canadian squadron he never knew was there. Wittmann's body would not be found until 1983, when road construction crews uncovered remains near the battlefield. Forensic analysis later confirmed his identity. By then, the story had already been written incorrectly. British tankers from the 1st Northamptonshire Yeomanry had long been credited with the kill. Their gunner, Joe Ekins, had destroyed 3 Tigers that day, and for decades it was assumed one of them must have been Whitman's. But the battlefield told a different story. The British tanks were positioned over 1,000 yards away. The Canadian Fireflies were 500 yards or less. The angle of penetration on Tiger 007 matched the Canadian firing position, not the British one. The fatal shot came from near Chateau Gomsnell, fired by one of Radley-Walters' Fireflies. He would not learn this for 45 years. In 1989, during a memorial visit, local French civilians approached him. They asked if he remembered August 8th. Then, quietly, they told him he had killed Whitman. Walters had never heard the name. He didn't study German tank aces. He didn't care about enemy legends. His job was destroying German armor. By mid-August 1944, his confirmed kill count reached 14. The Falaise pocket was closing. German forces were trapped, trying to escape east. The Sherbrooke Fusiliers pursued them through collapsing defensive lines. Panthers were destroyed. Tigers were abandoned. The Wehrmacht was bleeding armor it could no longer replace. Walters had survived 3 months in Normandy. But the war wasn't finished, and his luck was about to be tested again. On August 21st, his second Sherman was hit by a Panther round during fighting near Tron. The shell penetrated the turret from the right, killing his gunner instantly and wounding Walters in the face and hands. Shrapnel split open his scalp. 36 stitches later, field medics cleared him to return to duty. He was back in a tank within 2 days. Caribou 3. After losing the first 2 tanks, the crews stopped naming them. Bad luck, they said. Walters didn't care about names. He cared about crew survival, armor angles, ammunition storage. By then, Shermans with wet ammunition stowage were finally arriving. Shell racks surrounded by water jackets. It didn't make them safe. It made them slightly less likely to explode. The Falaise pocket closed on August 21st. 50,000 German soldiers surrendered. Thousands more died trying to escape. The roads were clogged with wrecked vehicles, dead horses, and abandoned equipment. Allied fighter bombers turned the retreat into slaughter, Typhoons firing rockets, P-47 Thunderbolts dropping bombs. German armor could not move in daylight. Walters added 3 more kills during the fighting. A Panther caught in the open. 2 Panzer IVs trying to cover the retreat. 16 confirmed kills, the highest total in the Canadian Armored Corps. He was promoted to lieutenant colonel in the field. At 24, he was one of the youngest commanders in the Canadian Army. By September, the Allies were advancing into Belgium and Holland. The Sherbrooke Fusiliers rolled through liberated villages where civilians threw flowers onto the tanks, offered wine, bread, anything they had. The celebration lasted 3 days. Then the Germans counterattacked near the Scheldt estuary. More Tigers, more Panthers. Veteran crews were being pulled from the Eastern Front, battle-hardened tankers fighting defensive actions on ground they knew, using ambush tactics perfected over years of war. The easy victories of August were over. In October, Walter's 3rd Sherman was destroyed near the Leopold Canal, not by a tank, but by a mine. His scout car struck a Teller mine during reconnaissance. The blast threw him 15 feet, killed the driver, and wounded 2 others. Walters woke in a field hospital with bleeding ears, a concussion, and a possible skull fracture. Doctors ordered evacuation to England. He refused. A week later, he returned to the regiment and took command of Caribou 4. By now, the crews called every tank Caribou if Walters was inside it. Simple rule. If Rad was there, it was Caribou. By November, his kill count reached 17. A Tiger caught from behind during a German withdrawal near Nijmegen. The crew bailed out before the ammunition detonated. Smart. By then, most German tankers understood survival mattered more than heroism. The war was lost. Everyone knew it. Winter arrived early in 1944. Snow, freezing rain, mud that stopped tanks better than mines. The advance slowed. German resistance stiffened as they defended their homeland. Every kilometer cost more lives. On December 16th, Germany launched its final major offensive in the west, the Battle of the Bulge. The Sherbrooke Fusiliers were in Holland, too far north to respond immediately, but German probing attacks spread across the front. On December 20th, a Panther company struck Canadian positions near Grosbeak. Walters engaged at 700 yards. 3 rounds fired. 2 hits. The Panther slewed sideways, turret jammed, crew evacuating. His 18th confirmed kill, the highest total achieved by any Western Allied tank commander, a record that would stand for the rest of the war. But the fighting was not finished. By January 1945, the Sherbrooke Fusiliers were advancing into Germany itself. The Rhine crossings, the Ruhr cities, villages silent and fearful. White flags hung from windows. There were no flowers, no cheers. German resistance collapsed unevenly. Fewer counterattacks, more surrenders. Tank crews abandoned Panthers and Tigers for lack of fuel, ammunition, and spare parts. The Wehrmacht was dying of logistical starvation. Walters added no more kills after December, not because the fighting ended, but because German armor stopped appearing. By daylight, it was destroyed from the air before ground contact could occur. The regiment crossed the Rhine in March, cleared the Ruhr pocket in April, and encountered columns of German soldiers walking west to surrender, teenagers and old men, desperate to avoid the Soviets advancing from the east. On May 7, 1945, Germany surrendered unconditionally. The war in Europe was over. Radley-Walters was 25 years old, a lieutenant colonel commanding a regiment. 18 confirmed tank kills. 3 Shermans destroyed under his command. 2 combat wounds. 1 concussion. He had survived 56 continuous days of combat in Normandy and 9 more months of fighting across France, Belgium, Holland, and Germany. The Sherbrooke Fusiliers became part of the Allied occupation force. Walters spent the summer of 1945 learning how to be a peacetime officer, training replacements who had never seen combat, processing paperwork, and missing the terrible clarity of war. Canada awarded him the Distinguished Service Order and the Military Cross for leadership and gallantry. The citations referenced specific actions, fillets, repeated engagements where his tactical decisions saved lives against superior German armor. He returned to Canada in 1946. Married Patricia. They had 4 sons. He called them the tank crew. He stayed in uniform, peacekeeping missions in Cyprus and Egypt, commanding the 8th Canadian Hussars, attending the NATO Defense College in Paris. Promoted to colonel, then brigadier general. He retired in 1974 after 34 years of service. The recognition came slowly and mostly late. France made him an officer of the Legion of Honor. Canada appointed him a commander of the Order of Military Merit. In 2004, the town of Byron, Normandy, renamed a small public space in his honor, Park Radley-Walters. A quiet park. Benches, shade trees, a simple plaque. A memorial to the man who had helped liberate the village 60 years earlier. He died on April 21, 2015, at the age of 95. He was buried in St. Paul's Anglican Church Cemetery in Perth, Quebec, near where he had been born. The Globe and Mail called him the most respected battlefield commander in the Royal Canadian Armoured Corps. Military historian Terry Kopp wrote that he emerged from Normandy as the best-known tank ace in Canadian history. And yet, outside military circles, almost no one knew his name. Few people ever heard about the former infantry officer who had never seen a tank before 1942, who went on to destroy 18 German tanks, who survived impossible odds, and who helped defeat the Wehrmacht one engagement at a time. His story nearly disappeared into silence, like so many others from that war. Almost. For decades, Sydney Radley-Walters' story remained largely unknown outside Canada. There were no Hollywood films, no best-selling biographies, just regimental histories, archival documents, and the occasional footnote in academic studies on armored warfare. What kept his name alive, ironically, was controversy. The question of Michael Whitman's death never fully settled. British veterans insisted Joe Ekins fired the fatal shot. Canadian veterans remembered the engagement differently. Battlefield analysis favored the Canadian position, shorter range, better angle, forensic evidence from Tiger 007's wreckage. But Radley-Walters never claimed the kill, never argued, never corrected anyone. When journalists asked him about Whitman late in life, he always gave the same answer. He destroyed German tanks. That was his job. Whose tank? Which commander? It didn't matter. To him, the war was never about records or glory. It was about survival, about protecting his crews, about supporting infantry who would otherwise be cut down by German armor, about doing the job because it had to be done. That attitude defined his entire career. His crews remembered him differently than official citations ever could. They remembered a commander who made them sleep, even in the afternoon, even when it felt wrong. A commander who valued crew survival over aggressive bravado. A man who understood that exhausted tankers made fatal mistakes. Someone who believed that getting his people home mattered more than adding another burning wreck to the tally. Years later, a video game, World of Tanks, created the Radley-Walters Medal, awarded for destroying 8 or 9 enemy vehicles in a single battle. Millions of players earned it. Most never knew the man behind the name. Never knew he started as an infantry officer reading tank manuals. Never knew he survived 3 tanks destroyed beneath him. Never knew he became the top Western Allied tank ace despite entering the war with no armor experience at all. And that may be the most fitting legacy of all. A man who never sought fame, who never chased recognition, and who simply did what needed to be done until the war was finally over.